This is for Voice of Jones County podcast. Another table discussion on various subjects that are of interest to us, and we hope that they're of interest to you, to the public, as we put them on our website. Voice of Jones County. Here right now we're in Anamosa recording, and if we could have a little introduction of everyone here.
I'm Greg Griffin, a retired minister. I came to Iowa from Connecticut in 2013 and was the pastor of the First Congregational United Church of Christ here in Anamosa until late 2017.
Beautiful.
Marilyn Gray, Onslow, Iowa. Wear many hats and enjoying old age and retirement.
And I'm Zini Abraham. I'm an artist and I have a studio space in Cedar Rapids that opens on Saturday.
Ooh.
And my new branding is intentional art for your peace of mind. So I intend to offer art for people to feel better.
Yay.
As a kind of art therapy.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Richard Tapia, one of the board members of Voice of Jones County podcast. Recently retired 3 years ago, and enjoying it a whole lot, and just a community member. So we had talked about the possibility of talking about what the meaning of Easter, and I said this is my favorite time of the year. I like it more than Christmas or any other holiday, and partially because nothing gives me a sense of renewal like this time of the year, Easter, of the symbolic meaning of Christ's death and rebirth, especially if you feel that Christ is within us. And so to me, Easter is the awakening of the Spirit for me. So that's why I like it.
Yay.
Well, this could be a very interesting discussion because I am recently out of a very strict Greek Orthodox religious experience for 28 years. And my experience with Easter, which is called Pascha in the Orthodox Church, is a magnificent celebration. It is just full of all kinds of beautiful symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
However, I can't say that I identify as a traditional Christian anymore. I think absolutely we should all strive to be Christ-like, and Christ was what we should all emulate. But I don't feel that the Christian church has done a good job of creating that in their faith, and that Christianity itself I can't identify with anymore because I just don't feel that embodiment of Christ in what I see in the current Christian church. So right now I don't have that same feeling of rebirth at all. At this time of year, certainly I do, because everything is just popping and growing, and all of the world is coming back alive after winter. So of course you're going to feel a renewal and rebirth this time of year. But as far as it being related to the birth and death of Christ, I can't say that I have that same relationship anymore.
What do you guys think? Greg, what do you?
Well, I think that I'm a Christian from birth. I was a Roman Catholic kid, and then I, over time, starting when I was in my teens, began to feel a stronger and stronger disaffection for the Roman Catholic Church. I didn't, and because it was the only thing I knew in terms of a religious experience, I just felt as though religion was not for me. I couldn't distinguish between them when I was like 12 and 13 and 14 and 15 and 16. And for a while, I was a person that, I don't know if I was spiritual, but I certainly wasn't religious in the sense of being bound to a church or a denomination, let alone a faith. I got distant from it. And now, since that time, came here because I was called to be a pastor at a congregational church here in town, which is a Christian church, but not a Catholic church. Its roots lie in the revolt against the Catholic Church, and it's one of the springs, little offshoots of Martin Luther's protest and escape from the Catholic Church. So,
what was it about the Catholic Church that created that kind of sense that we have to disassociate ourselves with that kind of dogma? What was it?
well, I think it was a mixture of things for me, and I have to say, now that I'm older and gotten along in life a little better, I feel less strongly against the institution of the Catholic Church. But then, and to some extent now, I feel as though the Catholic Church was so, and is still to a strong extent, very oriented around hierarchy and structure, and not thinking and not reasoning. You didn't need to do that. In fact, I felt discouraged from doing that. In college, I felt as though I was struggling with different parts of my life that weren't religious parts of my life, but so I went to the Catholic chaplain of my non-denominational college, who was the local Catholic priest in a tiny town. And he was just of no help at all. And he asked me to go back to my catechism and rely on that. So so that's just a little, I don't want to take this conversation over, but that's a little bit of a hint of why I began to feel more alienated from the institution of the Catholic Church, and was doing nothing for a while.
Marilyn, how about you? What, at Easter time?
Well, I'm going to start back to your question that what is the problem with the Catholic Church way back? Martin Luther put his 97 thesis on the wall, on the door, and that was all rooted in that the Catholic Church was selling dispensations for your sins. And he couldn't handle that approach to things.
That, I think, and a few other things he was upset with.
Well, probably a lot of things, but that was the big one.
Yeah.
And I would agree with you that, and probably you with the kind of treatment you got from your the priest there at college. I don't think the establishment Christian church, almost any denomination, really does a good job of presenting and projecting what Jesus is all about. And
well, why do you think that churches have gotten away from what we think Christ's message is?
Because man is involved, and man wants to make money, and man wants to have a bigger this and a bigger that and a bigger car and a bigger house and a bigger everything, and man wants to control a woman. And the Christian faith, not all but many, allow that. They allow a man to have say over what the woman does. And so we've got inequality starting right then. But Christ was about loving everyone at the level they're at. Christ was about loving the robber and the thieves equally. He didn't go to church and say, can you believe that so-and-so did this? Can you believe? Or, I see many Christians who others show up to volunteer and then they complain about how they're volunteering while people have shown up to give their help and love to support the church. And yet others there, I've experienced it, others there are complaining about the way that these volunteers have shown up. I just don't see where we're embracing each other in the way that Christ intended. And so that's my real problem with Christianity. Is I can't apply a label to myself that feels inauthentic.
And I really think it's okay to not think you have to be in one spot or the other, because if God made each of us unique, which what we all say, then why would he expect us to all worship one way?
Exactly. We
So-
all live in a separate universe.
Why wouldn't we be comfortable worshiping, behaving, the whole gamut, our particular way with God? I think that's a lot more where it's really at.
I do too.
I will differ with that a little bit and sort
Go
of
ahead.
amend what I said before. So I'm going to try to do two things in a small amount of time. Before I was saying how I became alienated from the Roman Catholic Church because of my experiences with it as a younger person. But now, and I still see, if in the newspapers, evidence, not just in the Catholic, evidence about hierarchies of the Catholic Church that is troubling, in that it seems as though the focus has gone away from helping people to find ways to to know of, understand, and then appreciate, and then actually accept God in the form of Jesus. Getting away from that and losing their focus on other things. But there are people here in Anamosa that have been probably more faithful to their call as Christians, to remember who Christ was and what he stood for, and to come together to worship that person. People like that who are Catholics, who this particular Lenten season have been going out of their way to do extra things, including worshiping at the Catholic Church, to try to refresh themselves about, wait a minute, here's my chance this year to recall why we're Christian. So I just want to amend that and say, this isn't, what I was trying to say was not a condemnation. I was trying to be an explanation of why I myself had the reactions I did. And secondly, to your point, it's the Zini, right?
Yeah.
Zina?
Zini.
Zini, yeah.
X-E-N-E.
Okay, so that's Greek.
It is.
Yeah. Xenophobia, is that a related word?
Well, Xeno is outcast or alien. So, but Zini is not the same word.
Different
Yeah.
root.
Yes.
Mhm.
Well,
Or,
I'm not quite sure.
yeah.
No one has ever said that it means that
Yeah,
to people that I've asked. So.
right. Anyway, I think that for me now, having gone through a period where I thought I'm not using my life the best way I can be. Why? And having this feeling, this stronger and stronger feeling of a pull or a call to become more involved and committed to a Christian life. In fact, to do what I needed to do to minister to others in that context of a church as a minister. So that was not something that I ever thought would happen to me, but it did. And in that process, I learned facts about the different, the early birth of Christianity, and then all of those things that went through it, including the Reformation, including up till now. And it was very beneficial to me, not only in respect to this vocation I was feeling, but also personally, because I could see and understand better, maybe with the passing of time and getting knocked around a little bit, that, there is a big question of faith there about the person of Jesus. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with confronting that, and when I come to the Easter season, I'm reminded of it, because there's the core of what Christians believe Jesus stands for. And he went to the cross and died and was resurrected to save us.
We're all talking about how we came to it and how we somehow lost that sense of faith and then maybe came back to it again. I had lost my sense of faith in Catholicism deeply, especially after Vietnam and all that stuff. But it came back to life when I started doing Native American Sweat Lodge in a very strange way, because it became a more mystical experience. And when I would do Sweat Lodge and go to church, I could feel the power of the service, of the ritual. I could feel it in my body. And my pastor, because we were good friends, he goes, "Well, you might have had a mystical experience." I said, "Well, it felt like it." And so that's what I think this time of the year, why Easter is so important. It is kind of a mystical experience. For me, I go through this sort of metaphysical death and rebirth. And it's incredible. But, to really have this sense for it, I wish there was a community that I could do this with, to go through this, because it becomes a deeper meaning. My wife doesn't get what I'm going through. And trying to explain it, sometimes it's difficult. But it's for me, it's very real that this thing happens. And I can see in everything that's coming to life. And so that's what I think God's asking us to do, that get rid of all the crap, all the garbage you've gone through this past year, and really come back to life. And for many of us, it's very difficult, because it's hard to let go of stuff, of whatever we're holding on to. They're anchors. They're holding us back. They're bags of garbage. They're all this stuff. And so that's what I think God is asking us to do. Let go of this. Become the true you. And come in through the light. Anyway, I don't want to get off on a weird tangent, but
You're hitting on a real important word, spiritual, I think. Because I think once you've been through the traditional thing and maybe, left it or come back to it or whatever, there's a whole different concept in your heart and your gut that is about spirituality, I think. And
well, Matthew Fox said it was actually a mystical thing to go through, but it's hard to put any kind of meaning or description to it.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe it to someone else, but that spirituality, yeah, it's there.
And then if you really get to the point of spirituality, at that point I think it's easy actually to be connected by faith.
What does it mean to be connected by faith?
Well, in my life, I trust what I read in Scripture. A lot of, or probably all of it for that matter. And I live by it. And I don't know, somebody said here something to the effect of service to others. Every day I'm doing that. And every day I'm thanking God for everything I have, and I address all my thank yous to Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I include them all, and and you know, I say stuff like that in my head. Probably, I don't know. You know, I can remember as a kid learning the scripture, pray constantly. And, you know, that's kind of confusing at first. You go, what? What? Gotta do that constantly, you know? But it isn't really that hard, because when you start looking at life and saying, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, I thank you for this or that or the other thing, or help me with this, that, or the other thing, pretty soon you're addressing God a lot.
Well, the other way I think to look at it, which somebody reminded me a few years back, that almost everything we say is like a prayer. Everything is an affirming prayer, or everything is it could be a condemning. There are negative and positive things we say. Those are all like a prayer.
There was just a quote, and it's like, I wish I could, I don't know enough about my computer to save it, but it was, when you do this, it's a prayer. When you do that, it's a prayer. And they just named a lot of everyday common stuff. But when you probably got that idea from Matthew Fox, if you read any of Meister Eckhart's material, because he said if all you ever said was thank you, that would be enough of a prayer.
Yes, Eckhart.
Meister Eckhart.
Eckhart Tolle.
No,
No,
not
no,
Eckhart.
no. Meister
Oh,
Eckhart is
Who's
a
Meister?
Oh, he's a right-line
15th
mystic.
He was the one.
15th
Eckhart
century.
Tolle studied Meister Eckhart.
Maybe
That's where he
so,
took
I
the
don't
name
know.
From. Okay, so I believe, and I always felt, and the Orthodox faith, but my believes that you have God within you. You are born of God.
Yeah, you're
So you have
you're a
God.
spiritual being, whether they
You
know,
have
you know
God
it or not.
within you. So I have always felt that God was bigger than any of us could understand. We couldn't possibly comprehend what God was.
Is it bigger
And
than the
so-
Second Amendment?
It's huge. It's our little brain can't wrap around it, and I don't think Christianity is doing a good job of capturing the
Conveying
essence
that.
of what God is. So within us, we have God, and we can hear God if we simply push aside all the stuff that isn't God. And the stuff that isn't God is worry. Worry, stress, remembering things that happened to us in the past, because we can't change the past. We can't do anything about it except accept what happened, and then recognize it was a lesson and move on. And then we can't worry about the future, because worry is simply creating a wall around us that keeps the good stuff from coming in. Because worry and stress is saying to God, to the universe, to source, to light, whatever you want to call God, it's saying, I don't believe that my future is going to be bright. So when you adopt the thinking that I am going to be thankful for this moment, because this moment is the best that it can be, and I'm going to make it that way because I'm not going to let my mind worry and stress, because that creates a wall. When you sit down and you think about the things in your life that you are thankful for, and you have continual gratitude and thankfulness for all the beautiful things that come your way, and you stop putting up the walls, only beautiful things come your way.
And building on what you already said, I always say, worry, if you get into that one, then you're saying, I can't trust you, God. I really don't have faith in you.
Exactly.
And it's like,
You're keeping
well, do you
the
want to go
abundance-
there? That's not a good place to be.
You're keeping the abundance of God from coming to you. And so this is where I have a problem with Christian faith. Sin especially. I believe that sin is simply not living up to your potential. Not being the best version of you that you can be. If you aren't giving back, if you aren't putting out positive things and love towards people, that's a sin. But I don't believe in sin. I simply believe that you should be the best version of yourself and put it out there. So perhaps you're called to be a preacher, or perhaps you're called to do art with people. You know, whatever it is that you do and you're good at, keep doing it. Keep adding to the world to make it a better place
You
all
bet.
the time.
I'm trying to get better sleep, so I'm going for that.
Let go of your worry first.
It's not the worry, it's just, I can't sleep. But, again, Easter to me is a beautiful time of the year. Besides looking at all the flowers and watching the grass grow and getting ready for our garden, if we were to turn into individual plants, coming out of the ground like that, breaking the dirt, breaking out of it, what kind of a plant would you want to be?
The flowers are so fleeting.
And if you were a flower, how would you invite the bees to come take pollen? What would you communicate? I mean, I like to think of it that way, that you could sprout up and just be this incredible looking flower, and these bees just want to hang out with you.
And the flower, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it grows, it expands, it does what it's supposed to do, and then it just fades, you know?
Yeah, but see,
And it doesn't judge the other flowers around it. It's not saying, she's not as beautiful as I am, and look at that flower. Can you believe that petal didn't come out right? I mean,
Well,
we are,
but
the
which
flowers
flower?
don't judge each other.
What flower or what kind of plant would you want to be?
Ooh, I'm really happy with my current status. I don't think I want to be a flower.
Oh,
I only get 2 weeks, maybe.
You'd last the entire summer, maybe go to sleep in the fall and come back in the spring again. That's the whole idea. But
I'll vote for being a rose. You know, you can think of all kinds of other ones that are wonderful and stuff, and it's like, oh, you know, you hardly can beat a rose. So
Good smelling rose, which is hard to find.
yeah, it's got to be
these
good
days.
smelling. That's right.
Yeah.
are there bad smelling roses?
No,
That
there's
way the
some
bees
that don't smell at
Don't
all.
smell at all. Yeah, that's the trouble.
Well, they didn't
Hybridized or something.
they didn't
Good
use
a good old fashioned rose that's been growing for 100 years by the gate.
Yes.
You know, they've got fragrance.
See, I guess I'm using that kind of a metaphor because for too long I was a cactus,
Oh, prickly were you?
prickly. And so I'm trying to change that to just be the flower on the cactus.
I was gonna say, have you ever seen cactuses blooming?
Oh yeah, they're beautiful.
Phenomenal,
Yeah.
just phenomenal. So there's hope for you, kid.
I'd like to know what your notes say.
Oh, well, I'll return to your point, but well, my notes are just about the possible value of a church, because I've said some things that were negative about my Catholic church experience as a kid, but I've had very positive Catholic church experiences as an adult, even though I no longer attend the Catholic Church as a Catholic, devoted Catholic. I attend other churches, Christian churches. But I've seen the Catholic Church be a huge rock for my mother, who was not a Catholic. My dad was a Catholic. She married my dad. The church wouldn't let them get married in the church because she wasn't a Catholic and didn't convert, but she promised she would convert. So over her life, she became a Catholic and a devoted Catholic, and it was very sustaining for her to have that church be with her as she went through difficult parts of her life and as she went through the aging process. It was good. And I know that even here in Anamosa, there are people who do find the same thing in the Catholic Church. So part of the notes there said, wanted to get at that. Part of the notes go to a point that you made, and a point that you made, Zini. There are different points, which was, you know, you have a spirituality within, do you need to go to a structure or affiliate yourself with a denomination or something in order to ratify that, or what's the need of that sort of? And in your case, it sounds as though the church was, well, obviously, you just gave a short explanation, but it sounds as though it became somewhat oppressive or perhaps male dominated. I know only a little bit about the Greek Orthodox Church, but it was diminishing to you, and not a place where you could go with other like-minded people and feel bigger than you would have if you didn't go there. It sounds like you were feeling littler than you would have if you didn't go there.
Yes, I felt very much like it was holding me back from doing something greater.
Yeah. But and I think that can happen. And I think it can happen in any denomination.
Absolutely.
And it can happen in any individual church.
Any faith,
right.
It can happen.
Yeah. And because I think they're human institutions that are sort of trying to point themselves to God.
Right.
Well, I think too, because they're historically in patriarchy, and it's almost tribal. It's hard to break away from really Christ's message was, no, women have the same power. But just like in many of the Muslim faith, the same tribal rules have applied, even though that's not in the Quran. The Quran was empower the woman, and yet so many that practice Islam said, no, you keep the woman back, you subvert her. And many of the Christian denominations do the same thing. But when this stuff is rooted in patriarchy, that becomes a little bit toxic even to the congregation, thinking that only men can have power. Catholicism has done a good job about questioning their sense of patriarchy. In fact, they try to expand it.
Well, I think it's actually a global phenomenon in humanity.
Yeah.
You go back in history, and inside and outside of the religious context, you find that problem. And it's only in terms of the span of time of civilization, a wink of an eye when people started saying, that doesn't sound right. I don't feel good with that. And so now, and in many places outside the United States, you're not entitled to have that point of view.
Yeah.
Try to have that point of view in Saudi Arabia.
Nope.
I don't think so.
Off with your head.
Right. So part of this is, I think that that there is a place for an organized religion, because there's a pastor in Dubuque in the United Church of Christ who, before she came here, was in Chicago, who wrote a book called Spiritual but Not Religious. Her name is Lillian Daniel, and she's the minister at the big United Church of Christ church in Dubuque. And her point in that book is, we sometimes can think that we're being spiritual without religion, but that actually religion contributes, if you want to do it, and if you're with people who want to try to do it the right way and not be oppressive or exclusive, there's something that you can achieve by binding yourselves. Religion has a root word or connotation of binding oneself to, that you can do that if you're doing it with the right frame of mind, and do more and do better than if you're trying to just.
But no congregation has ever talked about that.
What do you mean?
Binding. That if you feel these ways, how do you bind yourself to a group to practice what you're feeling? I've never heard any church talk about that, other maybe than the Quakers.
Yeah.
Other than who?
The Quakers.
Oh, Quakers.
See, my experience, and so when you had something of an enlightenment, whatever happened to you at the Sweat Lodge, and then you went to church, that was your universe. Your wife isn't living, she's living near your universe, but you are the only one in your experience. So she can't relate to your experience.
Well,
And
she hasn't
so
bought tickets to my theater, that's right.
my experience says to me, I don't need this guide. But if your experience does, I say embrace it. If it makes you feel better, if you feel that it is a good positive force in your life, I'm all for it. But there's two things that can't happen. Don't try to tell me that I have to be what you are, and don't judge me or anyone else for not being what your experience says you should be, because that is not Christ-like. Christ does not demand that we do one thing or another, except to love each other, love your neighbor as yourself. I want better for my neighbor than for myself. So this is how we're supposed to live. Christ-like, not a label, not a you, because you're gay I can't love you, because you have been divorced we can't be friends anymore. These things are old-fashioned, these ideas we all know, but we can't be judging each other anymore. So I don't want to come off as though I'm anti-Christian, because I'm not at all. If that works for you, I want you to keep doing it. But I also don't want to be judged because it doesn't work for me.
Mhm.
Well, I'm gonna have to cut this here real soon because Scott says that we can only take small portions of this, especially if we're videoing. How can we close this up? What need last words about this time of the year being Easter? Greg?
Well, I would say Easter is important to Christian people. So if you're a Christian person, this time of year gives you an opportunity to think back upon the person who, for you, is God's manifestation of God's self in your life, and what does that mean for you? What are the ways that you're coming or trying to come closer to what God would have you and us do, and what are the ways where you aren't? And how can you find in this season, how can you find opportunities to honestly reflect upon yourself while others around you are doing that, and others around you are hopefully experiencing the same thing? And how can you appreciate and experience the what it was that happened, the New Testament tells us, 2,000 years ago with Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Marilyn?
I'm supposed to say what?
What is this?
I liked what he said.
Okay, ditto.
I'll let that be good enough.
All right, so from my point of view, I would say this is the time where you go out and you see how things are coming back to life. They aren't holding on to their old past. They died, they're done, and now they're popping up out of the ground. And what you need to do is go outside and sit in nature and revel in how beautiful and magnificent and grand it is, and take it all in. Sit there and deep breathe. Just focus on what's in front of you. Let go of your thoughts and think of all the things that you're grateful for. And in that moment, see where you're guided and do what it is that you're guided to do in your moment of gratitude.
Well, the nice thing about being the last person to comment is I got to pick up a little bit. And I really liked what you said, Greg. I like your ditto. And I like what you said. And so I think about why this time of the year is so important, besides sitting outside, is we have to let go of all the chocolate bunny and all the Easter egg baskets and focus on how do we make our life better, not by making other lives worse, but by letting go and reflecting on what is good out there. And now that, besides the change of season, to watch the sun come up and the intensity of that light and how beautiful it is. Then when it goes back down again, like it's almost fallen asleep. And to anticipate it waking up again in the morning. It's us going through that whole exercise. So I see that in the intensity in light of what Christ is. Anyway, I don't want to get off on a weird tangent on that, but I love this time of the year. I want to thank all of you for participating in this, and I hope we can do it again. Next time we meet, it won't be Easter. And Scott, I'm sorry you weren't here. Carmen, I'm sorry you weren't here. You missed it.
But who was here? Who are you again? Say your name so we know at the end.
Richard.
Richard.
Yeah.
And I'm Zini.
Marilyn?
I'm Greg.
Okay. We're missing Captain Kangaroo, but
Oh, the timing couldn't be better.